You could feel it in the stadium like a held breath that never left the lungs. 2:01 left on the clock, down by 3, and Mike Tomlin chose to punt. That choice landed like a 2-ton question mark in the Steelers' locker room, in Twitter threads, and in the throats of fans who'd watched the team march into Soldier Field ready to snap a 30-year jinx in Chicago. The ball rolled away, and with it went a mountain of optimism. This was a tight, ugly, very Pittsburgh kind of game. Defense scrapping, a few bright offensive plays, and mistakes that felt amplified because both teams needed the win. Caleb Williams did what Caleb Williams does: steady enough, creative enough, and explosive when it counted, finishing with 3 touchdown passes that kept the Bears ahead when it mattered. Meanwhile, Mason Rudolph, pressed into starting duty with Aaron Rodgers sidelined, did the job he was paid to do: manage, keep drives alive, and push the team into position to tie it late. But the math of the final sequence made Tomlin's decision controversial. Punt, rely on your defense, force a stop, get the ball back with limited time and no timeouts. It almost worked. The defense forced a quick 3-and-out, and then the weird theater of special teams and clocks began to swallow Pittsburgh's chance. CBS Sports, what followed was a cascading small grooves of ruin. A bizarre fake injury on a punt return that burned a timeout, a hurried drive with 1:28 left and no timeouts, and an offense that looked rushed and a step short when the field narrowed and the seconds vanished. Rudolph moved the chains enough to get into range, but the Steelers didn't have that luxury of rehearsal. The plays felt hurried, the rhythm had been chased off the field by the clock, and a 4th down try at the end clanged off like the last note of a song half remembered. That final incompletion sealed a 31-28 loss and for many fans, validated the furious takes that had been building since Tomlin sent the punt team out. Pittsburgh Steelers. This isn't just a game in the standings. It's a story about identity. Tomlin's teams have often been defined by discipline, defense, and a certain conservative wisdom. Trust the complementary units. Don't force the issue. But there's a difference between trust and seed the moment. When you punt with 2:01 left, you're saying you believe your defense can flip the script and your offense can execute under extreme constraints. That faith is admirable on paper. In practice, it asks for near perfection from the men on the field. Inside a stadium full of fans who wanted guts over calculus, the decision looked like an abdication. Whether it was cowardice or cold calculation, the optics were toxic. Still curtain, let's be precise. Rudolph finished 24 of 31 for 171 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception, numbers that read competent but not game-tilting. The offense moved the ball earlier in the game. They outrushed the Bears and won the time of possession battle, but in the final 2-minute chess match, not having timeouts turned tactical choices into a house of cards. Meanwhile, the Bears' Caleb Williams engineered key drives and hit the shots that mattered. Those are the cold facts, and they explain why both coaches can point to blame and praise, depending on what side of the tape you sit. Pittsburgh Steelers fans aren't mad because Pittsburgh lost. They expect losses. They're mad because of what that punt symbolized: a lack of aggressive trust in a unit that, despite injuries and inconsistency, had shown flashes of life. Social feeds filled with the language of betrayal. Tomlin punted the game. Why not go for it? And that's the emotional piece of this. In sports, decisions are almost never purely rational once the outcome goes the wrong way. They become moral judgments. Did Tomlin make a defensible call that failed, or did he torpedo a comeback before it really began? The answer sits on a thin rim of subjectivity, but the fire under the question will keep burning. Still curtain. There's also the longer arc. The loss cost Pittsburgh critical standing in the AFC North and tightened the margin for error as the schedule tilts nastier heading into late November and December. When you live on defensive splashes and opportunistic scores, a single conservative decision can expose you to a season-long balance problem. The NFL rewards availability, aggression at the right times, and offense that can finish a drive when a coach asks for it. If Pittsburgh wants to stay relevant in the playoff picture, they need to reconcile Tomlin's risk calculus with the reality that the offense may have to be given more license to chase points in clutch windows. Behind the steel curtain. But let's not do the easy thing and reduce this to a rant. The defense did what it could. They forced stops, created turnovers earlier, and kept the Steelers within striking distance. There were smart calls, gutsy fourth down sneak calls earlier in the game, and moments where Pittsburgh looked like a team that could steal a road win. The issue isn't competence so much as philosophy. Do you trust the game to be won by minimizing risk or by seizing the moment when it's offered? Tomlin has long been on the side of control. A fan base yelling for risk is asking him to rewrite a philosophy in the middle of November. Pittsburgh Steelers. The scoreboard will move on, analysts will grind the tape, and next week another Sunday will arrive with new chances. But the tone of this moment, fans furious, a coach defended by history but questioned in real time, matters because momentum in a season is as psychological as it is statistical. A team that believes its leader will always punt when in doubt is a different animal from one that believes the leader will roll the dice when stakes are highest. The players will hear the noise. The coach will have to answer for it. And the next time the clock winds down with the division on the line, no one will forget how this ended. Still curtain. If you want an image to carry out of Soldier Field, picture this. A punt return unit trotting on at 2:01. A stadium that had hoped for a last stand. A defense that hustled to a 3-and-out. And then a final, rush drive that couldn't quite stitch the miracle together. That quiet little sequence, a decision, a few plays, a bracket of seconds, became a season-defining paragraph. The Steelers can argue the stats, the probabilities, and the virtue of discipline all they want. For a large swath of fans, what mattered was the feel. Tomlin punted instead of trying, and the moment slipped through their fingers. The question now is whether that slip becomes a stain on his tenure or a chapter that's quickly, quietly corrected. Either way, it's going to be loud for a long time. Pittsburgh Steelers, last line, coaches coach for percentages, but fans live for the plays. And when those two languages don't translate, the fallout is never just about X's and O's. It's about faith. You ever sit through a game where one decision becomes a landmine for the rest of the afternoon? That was Sunday in Chicago. Pittsburgh rallied, carved a long 17-play drive to cut the deficit to 31-28. Then Mike Tomlin chose to punt with 2:01 left and 3 timeouts, handing the ball back to Caleb Williams instead of betting on one more drive. The Bears did burn time awkwardly, but bizarre special teams chaos and a timeout trick left the Steelers with one last rush chance that came up short. Final, Bears 31, Steelers 28. Reuters, let's set the scene. Mason Rudolph did what a backup needed to do, manage the comeback, engineer a 17-play touchdown drive, and give his team a real shot. He finished modest numbers but produced when it mattered, and the defense then did its job by forcing a 3-and-out. Tomlin's punt call wasn't cowardice on the spot, so much as a vote of no confidence in his offense's ability to move the ball with the clock and field position in his favor. Fans saw the decision as Tomlin betting on a defensive stop instead of offense, and they exploded. Steelers.com. Why the anger is amplified. Context matters. Pittsburgh's offense has identity questions when Rodgers is out, and Rudolph had already shown turnover issues earlier in the game. But football is a margin sport. When you punt and the other team uses clock management and a little chaos to eat time, you accept the risk that your window to respond will shrink to a single, hurried drive. That's exactly what happened. A strange sequence on special teams burned a timeout, Rudolph's late drive was rushed with no timeouts, and the Steelers turned it over on downs with 20 seconds left. The optics? Tomlin's decision cost the team a clearer path to a tie. TribLive.com tactical breakdown, what went wrong and what to change. 1. Game state math over gut. 4th and 9 at your own 23 with 2:01 and 3 timeouts is borderline. But modern analytics almost always favor going for it in manageable yardage situations when the clock and timeouts give you multiple shot clocks. Punt only when expected defensive points and field position math clearly out